Welcome to tonight's live Jerusalem Dispatch ICEJ UK. We are the pro-Israel Christian ministry that's bringing you a closer connection to Israel and the Jewish people. Just a reminder, we are live, we are interactive, so we'd love to hear from you. This is actually my second recording of Jerusalem Dispatch, one in our studios in London and online with this Zoom event. And it's a great honor and a great privilege that we have a very special guest joining us all today. He is an IDF hero. His name is Ramy Sherman. And he was one of those IDF commandos that took part in the greatest rescue mission in history, known as the Entebbe Raid or Operation Thunderbolt. He will be reflecting on that incredible mission as we mark the 50th anniversary on the 4th of July. So we got absolute honor and absolute privilege to have a first-hand account of what happened at the Entebbe Raid. I'm just going to pass you now over to Dr. David Elms, and he's the UK National Director for the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem, UK. Here in the UK, he's doing an absolute brilliant job, brilliant leadership, and he's going to update us on the ministry that is ICEJ, plus also the forthcoming Scotland gathering, and also talking about the importance and significance of the Jerusalem Affirmation. And this is readdressing the historical wrong put out by the Nicaean Council back in 325 that lays the groundwork for Jew hatred. So over to you, David. Pleasure to see you tonight.
Thank you, Simon. And yes, and welcome to everyone. It's an absolute thrill for me to be present tonight and to hear this amazing story that is just going to amaze us, surprise us, and bless us. But regarding the Ministry of ICEJ in the UK, we've just had our conference over in Lincoln just a few weeks ago. And as a result of that conference as well, there was a booklet that was produced by Tim Johnson. I'll just hold it up for you now if it show clearly. And you can always get a copy from our office. This little booklet records the miracle of the Lincoln Memorial Stone. And it was just put together by Tim, our representative in the Lincoln area. And it has proved so popular, particularly amongst our Jewish friends, that many copies have been produced, many more copies asked for. So you ask for one and you can get it from our headquarters. And then Simon mentioned about our upcoming conference in Scotland on Saturday. That's a week on Saturday. We have our conference in Edinburgh. And then on the Sunday, we have an amazing conference with our Jewish friends in Glasgow. And again, you can get all the details and information from Joanne. But amongst the speakers that we will be having for that weekend, certainly on the Saturday, an amazing young man who has come to faith. And in coming to faith, he came out of belonging to the Houthis, and he was a Yemenite and had an incredible encounter with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he's now in the UK. He's under constant threat, but he has a great love for all people, especially Jews and Christians. His name is John Gannim. And then we have a keynote speaker who is on this panel right now. And that's Simon, so well loved and respected by Christians and the Jewish community. They particularly asked me for the meeting in Glasgow. Could Simon come along? And of course, it's our privilege that he's able to join us. You want me just to mention briefly then about the Jerusalem Summit?
Yes, please. I mean, I've got the up here. Look at that beautiful copy of the Jerusalem Affirmation of the Nicaean faith. There you go. This is what I got from Lincoln last week, and Tim Collins did a fantastic job. Took me around RAF Bomber Command and seeing the Lincoln Jewish Memorial Stone. Absolutely fabulous. Loved it. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, let me just give folk a little bit more of the background to the issuing of this affirmation of Nicaean faith. As Simon mentioned a little bit earlier, the Nicaean Creed was established in AD 325, and it began the agreement of basic Christian belief, and within it It's fine. It contains the foundations of what Christians believe, but it's tragic because it excludes all references to the Jewish roots of the faith. And the first council is recorded in Acts chapter 15, the council at Jerusalem. And in that council there, the Gentiles were accepted into the church that was in Jerusalem at the start of Christianity. And then, of course, came the terrible dispersion from AD 70 to AD 135. And by the time of this council, the roles had been reversed. And so the second council, although it's called the First Christian Council at Nicaea, excluded references to the Jewish roots of the Christian faith. And we felt after all this time and in this whole terrible area of anti-Semitism that we needed to put the record straight. And so this summit was called, and we were amazed at the people that supported it. The Israeli government were behind it. We had theologians across different denominations, and we've issued what Simon has just lifted up, this statement now, which makes and ameliorates that terrible disassociation of Jewish roots and brings us now right back up to date. So this has gone out into the whole Christian world. And this summit, which was just designed to be a one-off, we know it's going to be repeated next year, and we believe it will be being built on. It is a very important document. It's very important for Christians to understand how anti-Semitism began, even within the Christian circuit. And we need to stand against that and rectify it with our prayers, our actions, and declarations. So that's what the Jerusalem Summit and this affirmation of Nicaean faith was all about.
Now, before we introduce our special guest, Ramy Sherman, sadly, I was too young to remember the Entebbe Raid that took place on the 4th of July, 1976, also American Independence Day. But give us your reflections and your memories of what was the greatest rescue mission in history, bringing all those 103 Israeli hostages home back to Israel, and the IDF flying 2,300 miles to rescue them in Entebbe, Uganda.
Yes, indeed. My reflections, Simon, are very strong because, to be honest, for me, 1967 was a turning point in my life. I did know I was a student studying theology and Bible and all of that. And I knew the prophetic scriptures about one day the Jews would come back to their own land and they would also come into Jerusalem. And as a student way back in 1967, when that event took place, it was something that I could only describe as out of the body. It was amazing to see what I'd been taught, what I'd read. Here it was coming to pass. And so I saw this great miracle then. And then just these a few years later, 1976, to hear and see what was happening, that incredible, miraculous event. It was just like Old Testament times where the Israelites were being delivered from all these foes. The odds were stacked against them. There was nothing that they could do about it. And yet a miracle happened. And so this goes down for me personally in the annals of my mind. Just I'll never forget this, and seeing it on the TV, talking about it, and then seeing some of those great films that were produced afterwards. And for us tonight to have one of the key people involved in that in Ramy, wow. This is my memory and recall about it all.
Amazing. I've seen some of the films. The latest film's not very good, but the Entebbe Raid one with is it Charles Bronson? It is amazing.
That was amazing.
And what is so special is when they come home and you hear all the song, the singing, the dancing, the celebration as all the hostages have come home to what is Ben Gurion Airport. Anyway, so would you like to actually introduce our guest, but read out his impressive biography, because it's not every day that we have an IDF hero on Jerusalem Dispatch Live, but certainly not one that's so brave and courageous that he was one of those 33 soldiers and officers who took part in the Entebbe Raid.
Absolutely. And so Ramy Sherman was born on the 4th of April 1953. His parents were Holocaust survivors and came to Israel in 1945. Ramy grew up on Kibbutz Leovot Habashan, which is in the north of the country, and was on the Syrian border until the Six-Day War in 1967. He was educated in the kibbutz system. In 1972, Ramy enlisted in the army and was accepted into an elite unit, which today is allowed to be named the Sayeret Matkal, the Chief of Staff Special Forces. He successfully finished the combat soldier course and was sent to officers' school. In 1976, Ramy was part of the 33 elite IDF officers and soldiers who freed the Israeli hostages at the Entebbe airport in Uganda. Upon his return to Israel, Ramy continued to serve in his military unit and was a special operations commander until 1980. After he was released from active duty, he helped establish the reserve unit. At age 50, he was released from doing reserve service. Ramy is married, has 2 daughters, is a grandfather to 5 grandchildren. In 1990, Ramy finished his studies in physiotherapy at the University of Tel Aviv and has since worked as a physiotherapist in various positions, including being physiotherapist for the Israel Olympic team. In 1993, Ramy and his family moved to Kibbutz Mehagan Michael, where they still live today.
That was very impressive. Your Hebrew was very impressive there, David. Thank you so much.
I don't know about that. Ramy, tell me up.
and David has a special connection with our guest Ramy as well. Both are big Liverpool fans. So I'm in a minority in this program. Ramy, it's an absolute honor and such a privilege for us to have you as our special guest for this month for Jerusalem Dispatch Live, ICEJ UK. You're a good friend. I've interviewed you before on the Middle East Report, and we had that wonderful journey up to Norwich back in 2019. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you on and to have a hero of the IDF and one of those 33 who took part in the most audacious rescue mission in world history is nothing less than sensational. So a true hero of the Jewish people. Thank you for what you've done, and thank you for being here tonight.
From where to start to say a few words about myself. It's not always easy for me, but I would like to focus, Simon, mostly on one word that you've been using very often, hero. I am not a hero. And it's a meaning. It's not just, languages. I'm not a hero. I did, and other did, more than 33 soldiers. We were 33 soldiers who were in the front, but around 200 Israeli soldiers landed in Entebbe. Air Force, doctors, paramedics, other battalion soldiers, and all of us, and all the logistic people behind. It's not a hero. It's not a personally something. We did something that we've been educated from the first day in the kibbutz life, in Israel, in the society. And hero, it's something, I did personally something special, not at all. Like me, all the rest could do the same. And the number of soldiers who wanted to be on the plane to Entebbe, I was lucky that I've been on the first plane, but that's not mean heroism. And I really hate that someone used this word and said, Ramy, you are hero.
Okay, we haven't got off to a good start then, so I apologize. I won't call you a hero. I'll say that the entire military operation from the chief of staff to the Israeli Air Force that flew those cargo planes, to the commandos, to the Kenyan government that really helped in the assistance. You're all heroes, all right? And let's leave it at that. Now, Ramy, tell us about your Jewish story and tell us the story of what happened to your parents during the Second World War, because they survived the Holocaust, and no doubt their survival of the Holocaust had a big impact on you growing up, your values and how you see the world. So tell us their story of what happened to them during the darkest period in world history for the Jewish people, which was the Holocaust and the Second World War.
Thank you for the question. It's very important. And for me personally, all my family from my mother's side been murdered. They were murdered by the German, by the Nazi, almost at the beginning of the war. And my mother, even though she was handicapped, she ran away from a bridge where the rest of the family shot by the German. And somehow, after some days, crossing the forest, she arrived to Ukraine farmer. And she'd been living in his farm for the 5 years of war. And I do not know almost anything about her daily life, because she said one thing: better not to open my mouth to share the story. And when I was young, I was looking for the future and not to the family background. I look on the future of creating state, following the ideology, creating the kibbutz way of living. I've been living in a children's house, not in a parent's house. My parents' house was very darkness. The curtain was closed most of the time. No music. The only music which I remember was a program which ran daily when family put the name of family members they tried to find out somewhere. And the moment was 6:45 p.m., the parents said, "Be quiet, we would like to listen." Maybe someone survived the war, the Holocaust. For my father's side, only my father's sister survived in Auschwitz, and she was settled in Melbourne, Australia. And my parents arrived to Israel. My mother, she took to a camp near Haifa, which the English mandate soldiers took many Jewish who arrived from the Holocaust to Israel by refugee ships. And just by luck, they found themselves to where the kibbutz up north. And what they look, they never thought about ideology. They never thought of creating kibbutz, which was very important for the state. The most what they told me, we want a bed to sleep. We want a room where would be our home. That's all. And I am the second son of them. We were three. Our youngest daughter, my youngest daughter, sister, she passed away very early by cancer. So in that atmosphere, I grew up. My parents' house wasn't what everyone imagined as a parent's house. It was very meaningful for me but from a very sad side of life. Wasn't very happy house. And that's why I was always share my life in a children house as the most beautiful part in life, because people were happy, we laugh, we play, we did a lot of jokes and everything, but away from my parents' home.
So for viewers understanding, the kibbutz is the agricultural settlements all across Israel, which is part of the founding of the state of Israel. And what would happen is that the families and parents would offer the children in this, like a big children's nursery, where they could stay all day and they could make friends, and that's how they kind of grew up. So what impact did your parents have on you, and what was life like for you as you grew up through your childhood living on a kibbutz? Because kibbutzes are beautiful. They've got pristine gardens, beautiful communities, beautiful people. I mean, I've had the privilege of staying in a kibbutz for 3 months with the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, a kibbutz in Shifet in the north. Had an Olympic-sized swimming pool, was nice, and a swimming pool, and I loved going to the Hadat Al-Kal and study Hebrew one day, working in the Nicaean, which is a light factory the other. And it was like that whole summer of 1996 was the best summer of my life. So I love that kibbutz experience.
It is. All my life I've been living in a kibbutz. So, from the first day, now I am 73 and still kibbutz member. I got 2 messages from my parents, which was totally different. For my mother, I got 1 message. It wasn't a message that she said by words, but by daily life. Don't give up. She was handicapped, very serious handicap. She was born handicapped. It wasn't something happened. And she fighting for being normal in such things. And it gave me a message. Even though the time in my life when I was down, remember, it's a time to remember my mother. She not give up. That 1 message I got from her. The other message, maybe, I'm not sure, but that is my connection, because the Ukraine farmer looked after her. She was very, very sensitive to help to Arab, and then they call Palestinian. She helped a lot to very special family in Arab village, which they didn't know even how to count, different things. And she was a bookkeeper and did a lot of work for him. And it gave me a feeling that you should look after others, even though there is a lot of things that we are not accept, and we should sometimes fighting for surviving, still remember your humanitarian. And she did it. And I got it, that feeling. It's not only to look at the Palestinian as an enemy, as someone we should kill. They are terrible things, and they do terrible things. I will talk later about it. But still, there is another part. They are not only enemy. From my father's side, I got 1 message. He said, Ramy, the kibbutz life, and you should create your life as something positive. Even though he came from a camp, he was 3 years in a camp. You should look at life in positive, and in a metaphor he used very often to say, look, Ramy, life, it's like a clean sheet on a bed. It's white with a good smell. But remember all the time, don't forget the pistol to put under the pillow. And I got that message. Life is positive, and we should create a positive things, and we should remember the positive things and the good things in life. Not only on surviving, on fighting, on killing, on doing such a thing with gun. But don't forget we need gun, unfortunately, in the Middle East.
And talking about guns, tell us how in 1972, as part of your mandatory military service in Israel, you enlisted into the army, which is the Israeli Defense Force, accepted into the elite unit, which today is the legendary Sayeret Matkal Battalion, probably the equivalent of the British SAS. And tell us what it was like to be part of Israel's elite commandos, and what type of training did you have?
The first and most easy things to me to be in an elite unit called Sayeret Matkal, we were very small number of soldiers, fighters, let's say, and logistics. All the people was a bit more than 100 people in 72, not more. And it was part of the kibbutz way of living. Almost 100% of all the 100 or the soldiers, we were from the kibbutz, from the moshav. So we talk the same language. We understand each other very easily because our background was very similar to each other. So wasn't difficult to join such a unit. It was part of me. I just transferred from one situation in a kibbutz to another kibbutz, so-called, Sayeret Matkal. And to be in a small group, when you are very much understand that your friend is the one that you should believe on him in 100% while you are in a fighting, was very easily. That one thing, very easily was for me the time of join the unit. The other things which we should remember, especially in 72, today it's the same but a bit different group of society. We educated to work for the country. The country was very young, 72. It's only 25 years since. Not very much, not very many years. And still, creating state was more important than the individual, especially because we were Israel and the kibbutz system. We adopted the communism ideology as a way of living. When you're working for something bigger than yourself. Yeah. So to be in a unit, when you understand of what you do secretly, it's for the security of the state, makes the service much more easy.
And Ramy, unpack for us your experience really in the 1973 war, the Yom Kippur War, when tragically Israel was attacked on the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur, by the Egyptians and by the Syrians. And this was a very, very difficult war for Israel. Share with us your experience of being involved in the Yom Kippur War.
You know, briefly, ironic, when I read the question you sent me, Simon, and in the first week of the war, I was fighting in the Golan Heights. And the Golan Heights is a place where almost every month the Syrians shoot it into the kibbutz till 6-day war. I felt that I fighting to defend my home. Physically home, not for my country only, but physically. We went down to the kibbutz once when we were on the Golan Heights, and I saw a serious people who've been worried. Might be the Syrian destroy the kibbutz. Maybe they should fight for survive again. A lot of Holocaust survivors. And I was on the top of the Golan Heights, and I felt, Ramy, you defend your parents' home, not the country. No, of course it was a country, but first of all, I was fighting for give a chance to my parents, Holocaust survivors, to survive. And I remember I was thinking about it. Yoni Netanyahu, Zichrono Livracha, was the commander of our group of soldiers during the war. And I felt that he understood it from ideologies, the Zionist ideology, creating the state from a different view. Because he was born in America and his parents live in America, and we were fighting together. I am on my private home, and he fighting and reminding what is mean a home of a Jewish people, state of Israel, Eretz Israel. It was more clear to him than me.
Interesting. And I mean, certainly, I mean, that was a kind of brutal war for Israel, but we thankfully, we saw that Israelis were able to push the Syrians back from the Golan Heights. And of course, you can go out there to the Golan Heights and visit the tanks of that battle known as the Valley of Tears. And literally a miracle took place during that battle where Israel with pushback, was it over 1,500 Syrian Soviet tanks that were on the verge of invading the whole of the Galilee, and it was a miracle that those few tanks were able to hold those tanks back. And then we saw the reversal in Egypt as well, with Ariel Sharon being able to encircle the Egyptian Third Army, and so what looked from a defeat turned round into an incredible victory. And particularly the likes of President Nixon, who remembered that conversation that he had with his mother had with him, that say one day you'll be in a position of great power and influence, and if you're in that position, then you need to help the Jewish people in their time of crisis. And of course, he got that call from Golda Meir, and that was it. The plane loads of resupplies were coming in, because this wasn't just Israel against Syria and against Egypt, it was against the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union were supplying those nations to destroy Israel. Moving on a few years, so tell us where you were on that fateful day on the 27th of June 1976, when you discovered that that Air France Airbus A300 was on a routine flight from Tel Aviv to Paris, was hijacked by 2 Palestinian and 2 German terrorists. Firstly, took the plane to Libya, and then felt that Libya wasn't safe enough, the Israelis could reach Libya, and then flew all the way to Uganda under the protection of the Ugandan dictator Idi Amin. Tell us where you were and what your thoughts were when this major crisis blew up.
I was back from the kibbutz up north on Sunday, 27 June 76. I was back from my girlfriend. Now she's my wife. We've been together from the age of 17.
Congratulations, amazing.
And we prepare ourselves to go down to do the most important things of what I like in Sayeret Matkal. We did secretly a secret mission for the defense of the country, for give security for the people who live in Israel. But it's a secret mission, and we prepare it to go down to Sinai. On those days still was part of Israel, to do something which is so beautiful and fill up myself, my emotion feeling, my energy, doing something for security, for giving a daily life for people who do not know what we are doing. But I know we help the people in Tel Aviv or in Haifa or in kibbutzim to live in a more secure. That is what welcomed me on the 27th June 76.
Wow.
I was occupied as a operation commander of the unit to prepare to go with Yoni and some soldiers down to Sinai. And then on 1 o'clock, something like that, was on a square in a unit with a big bell, like to alarm that there is fire or something. The old time was a bell who, remind us, wake up from what different reason, and we should be ready to go somewhere in Israel because there is a terror attack. During the 70s was every month or two was a terror attack with hostages. And we choose to be on the front and fighting. And at 1 o'clock or so, the bell rang. Until we understood was a plane who hijacked from Libya, from Athens in Greece to Libya. But it was far away from Israel. And we thought maybe they will turn their face back to Israel. So we were ready to go to the airport, Tel Aviv airport or Lod airport, the name, to fight and to release and kill the terrorists. But after some hours, we understand that they are to Libya. And in Libya, the president of Libya on those days, Gaddafi, tried to stop the mission. He afraid that it will break the good relation between Libya and French. It was a French plane who hijacked. And after some hours, as we understood that the plane took off and not facing back to Israel, but going down to Africa, we didn't know what is the direction. We went down to do the other mission. From Sunday till Wednesday evening, Israel as a country, the army mostly, the government, look at the situation that on the front should be French government to solve the crisis, and not Israel. Not Israel. It's away from Israel. There is a lot of Jewish Israeli hostages, but away from Israel. The plane was French Airlines, which controlled by the government, landed in sovereign country, Uganda. So Israel was involved by understanding the situation and thought about the saving life of the hostages, Jewish hostages, but not something in practice. And it's very important to remember, till 30 of June 76, Israel, only thing what Israel did till that day was, it's a motivation of ICE officer, it's a part of Israeli motivation, to open Atlas and to sit and talk how we can occupy the world. How could we release hostages from Uganda? But it was something who's standing on very little information. And it was ideas, but not a plan.
So sorry to interrupt you there, Ramy, but I'm sure at the back of the mind of the then Israeli Prime Minister Itzhak Rabin and Shimon Peres, I think was the defense minister then as well, plus also the chief of staff will be thinking, we don't want a repeat of Munich 1972 when the Germans authorities took charge of the situation and then as a direct result ended up in the murder of 11 Israeli athletes at the Munich Games in 1972. So surely the big thinking would be, we can't afford France to do this. We need to do this ourselves to protect the citizens. So we know, for example, that the terrorists were then joined by other terrorists in Uganda. Idi Amin, the Ugandan president, was enjoying the limelight of the world's media and the spotlight of the media, has actually taken these hostages, which included the non-Jewish hostages as well. So tell us when you got that order that Israel was going to do the unthinkable and send flights to Uganda to rescue and bring home the Israeli hostages, who were being told that if the Palestinian terrorists who were in Israeli prisons were not released, then they would start murdering the hostages.
Before I jump over to Thursday, 6 p.m., when we got an order, I would like to more light on the turn point on Wednesday. Two things happen, and it's very important, especially on our conversation now. The first, the selection. Because when the terrorists did a selection in two steps, in the first step, they took the Jewish and the Israeli hostages and put them in separate room in the terminal. And the second step, to take the majority of the hostages, the non-Jews, and the two Air France plan landed on Wednesday and Thursday early morning and took back to Paris the 140 non-Jews hostages. That was one of the most important reason of taking Israel took responsibility on the situation, because Israel understood it's not only a question of terror attack. There is much, much bigger situation than only a terror attack. It's a question of existing of the state of Israel as a homeland of every Jew. Israel, it's a homeland of every Jew. It's not a state that every Jew could live in Israel. It's a homeland of every Jew. Doesn't matter if you live in London, in Melbourne, or in Jerusalem, or in Magan Michael. But Israel, after the Holocaust, put two words to educate us. I was child, born in 1953. Never again. Israel will fight for surviving, for give a chance for Jews to live physically, meaningfully, spiritually, which connect to all of you Christians who understand the meaningful of the life of Jews and the creation of the state of Israel.
Amen.
And on Wednesday night, the government said and understood it's a turn point of decision. We should show to every Jew first, never again. Jews will not executed in Entebbe without having a chance for the Israeli army to defend them.
And you only had 48 hours to prepare for this. So how?
And we only have less than 2 days, 42 hours from Thursday 6 p.m. till we took off from Tel Aviv airport to Entebbe. But the turn point, it's a very, very important, because to see the big picture, not only the military action.
Yeah, no, completely. Because obviously that meant that the French government would not intervene, because they know that they've got the majority of the hostages back. So therefore, this is no longer a French problem. This becomes Israel's problem. French government have always been appeasing the PLO and other Palestinian terrorist organizations, so they weren't really going to get involved. But we have to play a lot of credit, don't we, to the captain and the crew of the Air France flight, who stayed with the Jewish hostages, who said that we are the pilot, it's our job and responsibility to stay with our Jewish passengers and Israeli passengers, and we're going to do so.
There is two Christians which I would like to remind, and I always remember. First is Captain Michel Bacos. He was the captain of the plane who hijacked to Entebbe. And together with the 12 crew, they sat when the others flew back to Paris, and they got a chance to flew back to Paris. And after a long time of discussing the situation, they decided to stay with the Jewish passengers. And it's a question, why? Why someone, human being, say values it's more important than saving my personal life? We can see many people who did the same thing during the Holocaust, especially. Many Christians lost their life by trying to save Jewish life in Poland, in France, in Netherlands, everywhere in Europe. And Michel Bacos decided, and they vote, and all of them said, we are staying with the Jewish hostages. And that is very, very, unique decision to say, I am. I was in his funeral in the Central Cathedral in Nice in France, just by luck, by the one who control things. It's a different story. We haven't got time to describe it. But I was in the Central Cathedral in Nice, talk and thanked him about his decision. And as we walk out from the cathedral, the orchestra started to play the Tikva, the Israel national song. That was his request in his will.
Wow.
Why? Why he asked the Tikva, the most important, meaningful word for every Jew ever. Tomorrow will be better. Today, it's difficult. Tomorrow will be better. We have to work for tomorrow, not only for today. That's the Tikva, the hope. The hope, it's a prayer. The hope, it's wake up in the morning and jump out from bed. Many things.
No, absolutely. I just want to draw you back if we can. I mean, we've got to honor him.
But I would like to bring another person, which is very important and not always people mention him. His name was Bruce Mackenzie.
Yeah.
Bruce Mackenzie was an English fellow, born to an English family in South Africa, and then they moved to Kenya, and he became a minister of agriculture. And during the day of the crisis, he was in London, and immediately took the flight back to Nairobi. And he, with many Christians, prepare Nairobi as a back base for the operation. In many different aspects, we don't have time now to prepare. And he paid his life 2 years after the operation. Idi Amin called him to come over to Entebbe to sign a new agreement between the two countries. Because at the beginning, after the 4th of July, Idi Amin understood how much Kenya was involved and support Israel. And he asked him to come, and they had a beautiful lunch and signed paper. And just before he prepared himself to be back home, Idi Amin stood up and gave him a big head of a lion, which represents strong and ever good relation between the two countries. And as a small aircraft was above Lake Victoria, the head exploded, and Bruce Mackenzie and all his staff killed. And we should remember, we are not alone in this world. This talk, it's another example of our important and good relation.
Absolutely.
I am here to say thank you that we are not pushed away. We are not only focused on anti-Semitism. We are working together to create a better life. That is Bruce Mackenzie. That was Captain Michel Bacos. That is all of you around England and the world who said the Jews can't be the people who everyone can sweep from the history.
Amazing. And what he did in terms of setting up the logistics, and we know that many of the hostages were then taken to Kenya for field hospitals, field treatment, and without the logistic help of Bruce Mackenzie and the Kenyan government, this operation would have been impossible. But let's take us back to July the 4th. You were on one of those Israeli Air Force C-130 Hercules aircraft, taking off from somewhere in Israel to actually land near Entebbe airport. Tell us what the flight was like. Tell us what you were thinking when you were on the flight. Were you talking to your other comrades, other soldiers a part of your unit, or was everyone quiet, thinking and doing their own thing?
You know, now we are 50 years after. So I can put many words about myself, but I would like to try to take myself when I was 23 years old. And it's not easy, of course, but at least I will try. And I can say what was my motivation and the others who fought to be on the for Hercules. We educate and we understand that no one can do it apart us. No one can do it. Every soldier can do it, but no one can do it apart us. I mean, the IDF, Israeli Defense Force. We are toward Entebbe. That was my thought. I didn't know what that looked like Entebbe. I haven't got even pictures of Africa, Entebbe, the route. I didn't know anything in that short time of preparation. Very little, even though I was in a high position. But I knew each one of us has a duty, and the pilot should take us to the airport. And they brought us in 17-second delay of what they planned. 17-second delay.
That's incredible.
And it was very difficult flight. Very difficult flight. 30 meters above the ground, no seat, very noisy. You can't see outside where you were, nothing, nothing. But you believe that you do something important and you want to be on a plane. The other aspect, which, life after some years, we look on our life in a different view. And just lately, people started to talk about fear. Was fear, but every soldier has a fear. The only question is how we control this emotion. And I can say 100% of the soldiers, about one soldier who said, I can't go back to the plane when we landed in Sharm el-Sheikh. They were on a plane. We landed in Entebbe. Even people said, yes, to be on a plane without understanding what is on the other side of the darkness, of the unknown place. We believe that is our duty to do so. And we success. And it's a question why we success. I think for you, it's much easier to give an answer why we success than me. I did my job. I did what I have to do. I try to do the best. But if we look at the situation, you can give better answer than me why we succeed.
All the prayers, all the Christian and Jewish people praying for the hostages would come home. The God of Israel's intervention was absolutely miraculous. The fact that all the flights were able to fly undetected, going over hostile African nations, the enemy of Israel, then landing at Entebbe. And of course, everyone's seen the film, the Entebbe Raid. And of course, the great deception was the fact that of the plan to actually have a black Mercedes limousine together with Land Rovers to say that this is Idi Amin's entourage. He's arriving at the airport to take the whole airport by surprise. But it not only did you guys had to carry out a surprise attack, so they didn't expect it. You had to take out so much of the Ugandan army before you got to the terrorists. All the Ugandan MiGs had to be shot down and destroyed so that on the way back, those Hercules aircraft wouldn't be shot down. But then you then had to rescue those hostages at the airport. And if it wasn't for the Israeli architect who built the Ugandan airport in Uganda and Entebbe, then you wouldn't have the intelligence to know where the rooms are. You picked up the Israeli Mossad and security services were brief, detailed of what the rooms were like, what the terrorists were like. So you had a good picture of what you're going into. But there's nothing like having that knowledge, but then being there, seeing everything unfold. And then, of course, you're led by the legendary Yoni Netanyahu, who was the leader of that of the Entebbe raid. Sadly, he lost his life. But what was your role during that mission and as it was all taking place to rescue the hostages?
I took you and all the audience to the moment we stopped the 3 cars as the Idi Amin convict cars, the black Mercedes and the 2 Land Rover Jeep, who should be represent his guard. We stopped the cars on front of the control tower in an old terminal. And we divided our group of 33 soldiers and officers to 6 teams. We understood very clear from our experience the only reason for success of fighting against terrorists who hold hostages, we need 2 things. First, to try to surprise them as much as we could, and we thought by coming clothed as Idi Amin arrived, even though it was the middle of the night, might be we get some seconds or minutes, and that is the second point, to be the first who open fire. And especially if you divide it to 6 teams, so you are shooting from a different position, and maybe we were the one who killed the terrorists before they killed us or the hostages. And I was leader of one of the team. The other was around the building, and my team duty was to be on the front doors to be sure there is no terrorist or Ugandan soldiers who run from the back into the room while there is soldiers in the room, which could be a very difficult situation from someone who is shooting from the back and others shooting from the side, and might be others from the front. So we decided to build one team who should stop in case would be fire from other soldiers who are coming. In practice, what happened, we didn't know that would be soldiers and might be terrorists on a control tower, and immediately they opened fire. And most of the time I was fighting with the Ugandan soldiers and the terrorists who were on the top of the control tower. And that was the first duty during the war, during the fight. And then as the fire a bit slowed down, I came with the Land Rover and took Yoni Netanyahu, who wounded seriously in the first second of the fight, and took him to the medical plan, but the doctor couldn't save his life. And we were one Land Rover Jeep, darkness all around, strange airport. We didn't know nothing, but we saw the plane, 600 meters. We drove back. And the other force who arrived with the Hercules 2 and 3 stopped the fire from the control tower. And the last duty was to lead the hostages from the terminal to the plane. And first, I remember myself try to explain the hostages that we planned to do it by car, by the 2 Land Rover Jeep. But they didn't believe us. So on each one of them jumped over 20 or more hostages. They saw that only one direction, and who is not on a first interval we left them in the terminal. So we decided to walk the 600 meter and to see a long queue with the hostages, Israeli, Jews, the French staff with Michel Bacos, some of them wounded, the body of the 3 hostages who were killed, and beside them, Israeli soldiers to defend them. I hear a voice, Ramy, you save life of Jews. And this word turned myself years after, not at that moment, because at that moment, as I hear, immediately I saw my parents in Poland when no one came to save them. And now I'm saving life. I'm an officer in IDF, in the special force, saving life of Jews, hostages, not checking who is holding Israeli passport. It wasn't important at all. but innocent people who hold by terrorists. And I'm in a moment of saving life. And immediately I cut my thought, even though it was very emotional as it awake inside me. And years after, I understood something very important in my life. It was changing in myself. Not to be only Israelis who looking for the future, who left at the back, the diaspora, but it became, and I've been still in this journey to become more clear identity myself as a Jew. Not only Israeli. I call myself, I'm a Israeli Jew, but to accept it. I was born in a different ideology where in many aspects I was against this background. My count was from the beginning of the Zionist movement. My count was in other counter from the 48 war, in the independence war. We create a new Jew in Israel called Israeli, but the old one who go to pray or saving Shabbat, etc., was something negative. The positive is the future. And I, since then, Entebbe, standing on understanding the past is not less important than the future. The past is part of me. I can't cut myself from my years of DNA being Jew. It's not an easy life.
If I just take you on from what you're saying, and I think to help our viewers as well, and I think this is the extraordinary turnaround of the situation. Had it not been for the re-establishment of the modern state of Israel, I believe fundamentally by the fulfillment of biblical prophecy, God's hand bringing the Jewish people back, your people, back into your homeland, creating a state again, and then having an army. If there was no state of Israel, then those Jewish hostages held by the terrorists in Entebbe would never have been rescued. And so this is a kind of the answer to what happened in the Holocaust that enabled Israel and yourselves and that elite unit to rescue those Jewish hostages held by the German and Palestinian terrorists at the Entebbe airport 50 years ago. So you're literally reversing what happened at the Holocaust to say we are Jewish, we are proud, but we will fight and stand with our people. Something that the Jewish people went through the Holocaust never had the opportunity to do, apart from those brave and courageous Jewish people who defied the Nazis at the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, who raised the Israeli flag then against the Nazis in defiance. So again, it's rewriting that history, knowing that you have a state and an army and a God protecting you. But I'm just going to finish the tonight's amazing interview with you, Ramy, on what it was like coming home. What is it like coming home, landing at Lod Airport, which is now Ben Gurion Airport, with the Israeli hostages, and to know that the nation who was so much in trauma over the plight of the Israeli hostages, knowing that they'd come home safely, but only a few years earlier, so literally 4 years earlier, we had the horrible tragedy of Munich. What an incredible history and what an incredible turnaround.
I'm not sure, might be, I disappoint some audience.
No, not at all. No,
I was landing in Israel on Sunday, 4th of July. And I got 24 hours, a break for being in activity and see my family. And my parents on those days, they were in Melbourne, in Australia. So I met my sister Alea Shalom, and my girlfriend. And the next day, I was up in Jerusalem to Mount Herzl for Yoni Netanyahu's funeral. And on Wednesday, 3 days, the world was amazed by what happened. The people in Israel, they were amazed, and we were a secret people. We shouldn't say that we took part because we were a secret unit. And in Wednesday morning, I woke up and I said, okay, I did my job, and now I'm ready to another mission to prepare for the security of the state. It wasn't something that I was amazed. I knew that I was in Entebbe, but nothing more than what I understood years after. Nothing more. Was a mission. I did it. I took part, and I'm ready for next. And that's why heroism, it's not part of me, because I did something much bigger, Simon, for the security of the state. It took 5 months, and it filled up my emotion in a positive mission, much more than Entebbe. So it's look a bit contradiction, you know.
Yeah, of course, but you are always going to be remembered for the Entebbe Raid. No one's going to remember anything else, even though you probably did some incredible military operations. But you're on here tonight. Pete, Christians love you around the world because you were one of those IDF elite commandos. And yeah, you took part in the Entebbe Raid. And it was, and we have to describe it as this, the greatest rescue mission in history. To travel over 2,300 miles to Entebbe to carry with only 42 hours training, and then to carry out the most audacious raid rescue to bring everyone home, and Israel rejoicing, the Jewish people rejoicing. That is how you defeat Jew hatred. That's how you defeat it. And you were part of that. Anyway, if we're going to spend a little bit longer, because not every day I get an opportunity to interview someone like Ramy on Jerusalem Dispatch Live. So we got a couple of questions. So I'm going to open this up to the floor. So if you have any questions for Ramy, do please put them forward. Now, we got a very special woman who's given a message. She's an amazing woman called Cynthia. She's Jewish. She is the co-founder of Cornwall Friends of Israel. I had the pleasure of interviewing her on the Middle East Report.
Okay.
And both, like you, both her parents were Holocaust survivors. And she's an amazing woman. So this is what she writes. She writes, describe how what your parents went through in the Holocaust strengthened your determination to fight in the Entebbe Raid, and say compared to other soldiers who were not children of Holocaust survivors, what were the towns where Ramy's parents grew up exactly? Where near Haifa did Ramy's mother live on arrival to Palestine as it was then? So Cynthia has a vested interest in this because both her parents were Holocaust survivors, and she's a remarkable woman. So you might get to meet her soon, hopefully.
Tell her, please give her my mobile or my email, because it's more personal. I prefer, not. It's my father born in a city not far from Lodz, Łódź, in Poland, and my mother, she was born in a small villages near Ukraine border. Kleven, it's called, very small, very little village over there in the east part of Poland. And Piotrków, where my father born, was a very special town, city. I've been there. It's a very interesting story for the next time talk about me. I would like to put, maybe it's without question, I would like to put something important. I've been around the world for 8 years, and then the war stopped. And in the war, which been still in a different way, two things happen. And now I am talking in the world on the connection between Entebbe Raid, the massacre of 7 of October 23, and the antisemitism in the world. And they connect. And one of the important words which you've been using in your beginning word was homeland. At 76 was so strong for many Jews to understand that Israel is a homeland. After the massacre of 7 of October, many Jews in Israel and abroad, in the diaspora, it wasn't clear about physically place where it's a homeland. And the anti-Semites created a very unsafe place for Jews who live outside Israel. Jews were murdered in Australia, in Manchester, in Los Angeles, because they were Jew. And today our mission is give a hope, tikva, for Jews to create again the meaning of homeland, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. That is what is my understanding, our mission of all of you, the Christians who support Israel and people who believe like me. The home is the word, home, homeland, future, standing with no hesitate. That is the homeland of Jewish people. And we are standing together. In October, we meet again.
Absolutely. Ramy, we love you, and we love Israel. We love the Jewish people. You're not alone. You're not alone. We're fighting with you.
Thank
what
you
happened
for
on
that.
October the 7th.
Thank you for this word.
Which is absolutely horrific. And this just gives us that greater determination to do what's right. Now, we do have a couple more questions before I bring in Dr. David Elms. So we have an amazing interview. Thank you. That's from Andrew Jones. So thank you for that one. We also have Candice who writes, thank you so much for this amazing presentation, Ramy. In my estimation, and I'm sure everyone hearing the story tonight, you certainly are a hero. They don't argue with her. With the memory of your daring rescue of all those hostages from Entebbe, how did you feel when Israel had 251 hostages held in Gaza with the IDF rescue mission Operation Thunderbolt taking place on the 8th of June 2024? That's a fantastic question. Fantastic.
It is so much different situation in 76 and 7 of October when the terrorists from Gaza caught 251 hostages alive and death. In Uganda, they were in one place. At the end of the day, Uganda, it's not an enemy. It's a country with a difficult president, but they were not an enemy country. While in Gaza, they spread over the hostages to family, different militia, different place. Was very, very, very difficult to rescue them by power. Very difficult. With success in very little number. But at the end of the day, most of them arrived safely alive, not all of them, but mostly by negotiation. And it's a big question. Was it right or bad? It's a very difficulty to people who are in a position of taking decision. I am now Altekaka, I'm old people. I'm not in a position to take a decision. I can say what I think, but I think the people who are in a position of taking decision, it's very hard. Very, very difficult situation. Israel found herself, and it's a question, but not open today. I'm working with some people, how it's happened, the Yom Kippur War, in such a surprise, and now the terrorists, how they surprised us in 7th of October 23. What happened to Israel? What happened to the intelligence? What happened to us as a society? How did that happen? And if I look at the situation, there is a lot of similarities from 73 war to 23 massacre, and then the war which opened after. Something happened to us as a society. We should find the right word for living.
Absolutely. Can I answer a little bit of that? And this is what I love about Israelis, and this is what I love about the IDF, that if one man or one woman is behind enemy lines, Israel will do everything they can to bring them home. They're never alone. They're never alone. And
even it costs life for save their life. Even it costs life.
Even, yeah, for example, the architect of October the 7th, Sinwar, was released in the hostage deal with then the Israeli hostage who was taken hostage. I forget his name now, but he was captured in 20 years ago around this time, which is extraordinary. Now, a final question I'm going to give to George, who writes, do you have an opinion on the outcome of the present conflict? That's quite a big question.
Oh, wow. I think there is two levels to focus, to put a light on: internal and external. Internal, I hope and I work for that. We should understand we can't go out of being Jew, who living together. People can think differently, have different idea, but the meaning of one nation should be always alive and a light in the darkness night, a star, which we should remember. That is internal in very, very short. Externally, I think we should go to a difficulties years now. There is no solution. There is no solution when radicals movement, militia, thought in a different way. It's not a time to open, to find a compromise, how to live together. It's very, very difficult. Of course, I can't say what will be the future, but that is my way to look at it. We are not in a situation to solve the outside conflict at the moment.
Excellent, very helpful. So I'm going to bring in David to kind of sum up and conclude and to pray for everyone who's watched this incredible and remarkable interview with Ramy Sherman, one of those IDF commandos that took part in the Entebbe Raid 50 years ago.
Yes, indeed, Simon. What an amazing evening. And Ramy, your humility just speaks volumes. And I think, you know, you declined to accept the term as being a hero, but you know, we've heard of heroes and we've heard of miracles tonight, and it's astounding. And you've given us a lot of food for thought. I am very impressed with the lack of bitterness and hatred, which could certainly be there, and we know is all around with the anti-Semitic forces that are operational today. And so thank you, and thank you to our viewers as well. And let me just pray a closing prayer now. And we thank you, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God who performed miracles, the God who still performs miracles. We thank you, Lord, that somehow you've brought your people through the fire and through the flood. And when we just rejoice and thank you for this mighty act of deliverance, taking ordinary people and using them to do extraordinary things, we give you thanks. And we ask now, Lord, for your blessing and your mercy to be upon Ramy's family, Lord, for all those who still survive, for our viewers, for people in their going out and their coming in. May they also know that there always is an atikva, the hope that will last forever. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. So, Ramy, we want to thank you so much for being our special guest tonight. Enjoy the 4th of July. You deserve it, together with your fellow soldiers, because what you guys pulled off, including the whole logistics team, was nothing less than a miracle to bring those Israeli hostages home. And you really did make a difference in the lives of those Israelis, and now they have families, and now they have loved ones, and now they have lots of families. So by that one mission, you gave hope to Jewish people and the nation of Israel around the world, and you brought happiness and joy, and that to an entire nation, which is very special. And I just want to thank you all for watching this live Jerusalem Dispatch ICEJ UK. Can I remind you, please, can you support this ministry so that this ministry can play a vital role in blessing Israel and the Jewish people, particularly at this critical time where we see this pandemic of Jew hatred. We're seeing this isolation of Israel. But we also have to remember that the God of Israel is known as Adonai Sevot, the Lord of armies. He is the God over Israel. He is the protector of Israel. And the God of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. So let's continue to keep Israel. Please keep Ramy in our prayers. And thank you for watching tonight's live Jerusalem Dispatch as we've marked the 50th anniversary of the greatest rescue mission history, known as the Entebbe Raid, Operation Thunderbolt. Thank you, and shalom, and good night from us. Toda rabah.
Shalom, 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 and see you soon on the ground.
Soon, my friend.
Bye.
Bye,
bye, David.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Simon.
Bye-bye, Ramy. Toda
Bye,
rabah.
bye.